3 things to avoid when teaching your child how to sit. Are you making these mistakes? Because I know I sure did. If your child has a developmental delay or a disability due to something like cerebral palsy, a genetic disorder, or a brain injury, sitting is one of those milestones that you are working so hard towards. I know because my daughter has a rare genetic disorder, and sitting was one of those golden milestones that I thought if she could just learn how to sit, everything would be okay. Because independent sitting gives them so much independence. I couldn't wait for her to be able to sit by herself without falling over. My daughter eventually learned how to sit independently, but I did some things that I regret along the way. Because I didn't know any better at the time, I was just a mom scared that my child would never learn how to sit. But now that I'm an Anat Baniel method practitioner and teach natural development exercises to parents just like yourself, these are 3 things that if I had to do it all over again, I would totally avoid. So the first thing I would avoid is any sort of restrictive device to place your child in to help them sit up, but in reality, it's just locking in the pelvis in one position that prevents any movement at all. Sitting is dynamic. We want our kids to be able to reach for something without falling over. We want our kids to be able to transition from sitting into a crawling position. We want our kids to be able to transition from sitting up into a standing position. So we want to avoid any device that restricts the movement of the pelvis, the spine, and the head. Your child's brain needs to experience and learn how to move the pelvis, the spine, and the head all together, all coordinated, to be able to sit independently and not fall over. And these restrictive devices restrict the brain from learning how to coordinate the head over the spine, over the pelvis. The second thing I would avoid to help my child learn to sit is to prop them to sit before they're ready. And oh boy, I did this one so many times. Propping your child up to sit might look like putting a nursing pillow behind them, propping them into the corner of the couch so they don't fall over. Now, side note, propping to sit isn't always a bad thing. Sitting with your child in your arms or propping them to sit for short periods of time so they can socially interact and they're in a safe place where they can still move their head, their spine, and their pelvis, that is perfectly fine and you're doing amazing. You want to avoid the propping to sit where it's restricting their movement of the pelvis, the spine, and the head. And there's a really good chance if you're propping to sit, your child probably doesn't have head control yet. And if your child doesn't have head control yet, they're not ready to sit. And it's simply because their brains don't have the right information to coordinate the spine, pelvis, and head to work together to balance their head over their spine, over their pelvis. So if your child doesn't have head control yet, you gotta back that bus up and work on head control first. Build a strong foundation of your child's brain knowing how to coordinate the pelvis, spine, and head first. And I have so many videos on how to improve head control. You can go check them out over here. Now, the third thing to avoid when teaching your child how to sit independently is to avoid focusing on the end position, the sitting position, and shift your focus to focusing on the transition of sitting. Knowing how to get into and out of sitting is so much more important than the end result of sitting. Because when your child's brain has all of the pieces to get themselves into sitting and out of sitting, they won't need to be propped up because their brains already have all of the information they need to balance themselves in a sitting position and still move around and reach for things and be functional in sitting. So instead of working on the one-dimensionality of sitting, one position, explore the transition of coming into sitting and getting out of sitting. Now, rolling from the back through the side up into the sitting position is only one way to transition into sitting. If you want to know the 3 transitions into sitting that can help your child independently sit, click on this next video to learn them.